28 years later, the Bone Temple concludes the story from the first part. I like the first part better. Whether you're watching the first part or this second movie, because this is the thing, is that this is one movie split into two parts. Okay? I would say don't go into this movie without watching the one before. Because this movie is basically a conclusion and continues all the storylines from the first movie. In the first movie, we see some sort of church that was crashed into. Remember, some priest was eaten by zombies. He wouldn't leave the church. He stayed in the church in the previous 28 years later. And that was that blonde Jimmy character with the Teletubbies at the end. He's the villain, basically, of the Bone Temple. Because, these 28 years later movies, the villain is always some crazy human villain, right? Kind of like The Walking Dead. But in this movie, we find out that Jimmy is the son of that priest that had died in the previous movie. Okay? And remember, we saw his origin story of when he was a kid. I guess he saw his whole family being eaten. I have to rewatch the first part. But that's what I remember, because I saw the first part in the theater. And a lot of people don't remember those Jimmy flashbacks from the previous movie. So those Jimmy flashbacks really explain why Jimmy and his gang of Jimmys in this Boneyard movie are so crazy. Now, I really can't recommend the movie because there isn't a lot of zombie scenes. Now, the ending ends with the character from the first film coming back. The characters from this movie, the boy, and that little boy from the previous movie, he meets a girl. And now they run into Cilian Murphy's, actor Cilian Murphy's character from the first movie. Right? At the end of this 28 years later movie. But the reason why I can't recommend the movie is there's a lot of naked men for no reason in the movie. Okay? It's like they have that zombie guy, this dark Indian huge zombie guy who they call Alpha. Alright? And he's basically eating white people the whole movie. Right? So I thought the movie was kind of insulting, and then you're going to see a zombie movie, and every other scene, and by the way, the only naked zombie in the whole movie is this Alpha guy. But then on top of that, they have to show us this guy who played Voldemort. They have to show us him naked, all right? And not for one scene. It's like literally for like the whole movie, these two dudes are naked, all right? And it's the movie is hard to watch. Like, okay, the last movie, I could watch it, right? There was some action and stuff, but this was like really two naked dudes the whole movie, basically. And so I really can't recommend the movie. And in terms of zombies, there wasn't that many zombie scenes. And this whole storyline could have been taken care of, with the Jimmy character and everything. That whole storyline could have been taken care of in the previous movie. They didn't have to separate this and make it 2 movies. By the way, these movies were filmed on an iPhone, right? I know Danny Boyle filmed the previous one on an iPhone. I saw this on ScreenX. This was my first time in ScreenX, where you also get like the sides. The best one is IMAX. I gotta tell you, if you're gonna go to see any movie in the theater, go to see IMAX. But I'm definitely gonna think twice when spending my money in the theaters. Because this is one of those movies that definitely wait until VOD. Cilian Murphy's character returns at the end. At the very end of the movie. We see our 2 main characters being chased by zombies, and he has like a little black daughter who has a telescope, and she's saying, "Look, Daddy, should we help them?" And Cilian Murphy looks through the telescope and he's like, "Yes, let's go help them." And that's when the credits roll and the movie ends. 28 years later, the Bone Temple has no end credit scene. So remember that. There is no end credit scene. Once the credits roll, after the Cilian Murphy scene, that's it. Once the credits roll, the movie ends. And I saw this movie because I saw good reviews. I was like on Rotten Tomatoes, right? I went on Rotten Tomatoes. And people were saying some really good things about the movie. People were saying really good things about the movie, only to see that it's like fake reviews or something, because this movie is not a good movie. It's like really wait for VOD. That bad. One of the wokest movies I've seen. I mean, you can't carry a movie by having 2 naked dudes strolling around with no pants on, totally naked, the whole movie. It was like torturous to watch. The only reason I had gone to see this is because I actually liked the first. I really liked the first one. The first 28 Years Later is a great movie. And Walking Dead kind of copied 28 Years Later, but the first 28 Years Later is a great movie. And I like 28 Weeks Later, right? And then I would say the last one, 28 Years Later, was watchable. They tried to do something different. And then this one was not worth it. That's all I can say, is not worth it. But they bring back Cilian Murphy's character at the end. So they're like, "Oh, see, we got you for one more. If you really like the first one, just give us one more chance after this one." So this one wasn't directed by the original director, Danny Boyle. It was directed by Nia DaCosta, who directed The Marvels. But it basically has the same tone as this last 20 years later, and just carries on the story. So there really is no difference between the last movie and this movie. The big difference is that if you thought you saw a lot of naked dudes in the last movie, this movie has like naked dudes the whole movie. It's like 80% of the movie is the Voldemort and that dark alpha naked. And it doesn't even make sense because things that don't make sense, right? The dark alpha turns into a human. He's supposed to be a zombie, right? Then he turns into a human. Voldemort is able to bring him back somehow as a human. And then he gets bitten and turned into a zombie again by the end of the movie. Also, there was this whole message of, instead of zombies, there was this whole messaging to Satanism and sacrifice. Which, okay, you did it in the last movie, but then you have to make a whole nother movie about it. And then what else? At the start of the movie, Jimmy and his gang take over a house, right? And the way we're introduced to the family of the house is they were being chased by zombies while they were hunting. They come back and their family is cooking dinner for the Jimmy gang. My question is, why are they already cooking dinner for the Jimmy gang? And we didn't see how the Jimmy gang got them to be cooking dinner for them. Because when we get to the house, there's some dude there cooking dinner for the Jimmy gang. So why did the family already accept the Jimmy gang into the house? And why were they cooking them dinner if they felt threatened by the Jimmy gang? So that scene where we're introduced to the Jimmy gang for the first time in the house didn't make sense. That's number one. Because why was the family who owned that house already cooking them dinner? Right? And then Jimmy's at the table and he's like, "Do you feel threatened by me?" And so we didn't see how he was even able to get into the house, number one. Number two, the alpha zombie dude turned into a human, turned back into a zombie. That didn't make sense, right? Then the other thing that didn't make sense is half the story was in the last movie. Jimmy's whole origin story. That when Jimmy meets the Voldemort character, right, the actor who played Voldemort, for the first time, they talk about that flashback scene from the previous movie. And my whole thing is, even if you watch the previous movie and watching this movie, 90% of your audience isn't going to know what you're talking about. Right? So, a lot of things about this movie that didn't make any sense. I personally can't recommend the movie.